Welcome to the AI Unveiled podcast with me, Gaurav Kotak. Today, I'm excited to speak with EJ Cho, co-founder and CEO of Tofu, an AI platform that helps B2B marketing teams personalize and scale their content. In this episode, we dive into Tofu's ability to fully automate top-of-the-funnel marketing efforts, hence the name Tofu, and how AI is reshaping the future of personalized content. EJ spent multiple years in engineering leadership roles at Google and Meta, so we also discuss his biggest learnings in transitioning to the founder role at a startup. Let's get right into it. EJ, welcome and thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk more about AI and a little bit of what we're doing.
Yeah, well, on that, for those who might not know, can you give us a brief summary of what Tofu does?
So Tofu is an omni-channel personalization platform where we help B2B marketing teams scale their content needs across a various of sectors. So one is across customer segmentation, where they can scale their campaigns, their content needs across different channels, across customer segments like personas, industries. Account-based marketing is a popular one that teams want to do often, where they scale their content across different accounts. Another area where we help marketing teams is scale their content across different channels. So we call this repurposing, where you have a primary piece of pillar or anchor content, but then we help you create all the derivative content that comes with it or your campaign.
Amazing. So pillar one is personalization for account-based marketing or other segments. And pillar two is repurposing. And what I called when I first time we met is remixing, a little bit like a DJ. Can you share an example of an awesome campaign that one of your customers was able to run on Tofu?
So this is a beauty of Tofu. The core pieces of Tofu is that we feel right now there's such a proliferation of marketing tech tools out there. And people are really inundated and somewhat annoyed by the fact that they have to use like 6-7 different tools for every single channel. That's also kind of my personal history around why I started this tool. The big premise of Tofu is, well, now with AI, you can scale all these content across different channels much more effectively. We can help you do that across the channels in one platform. So the big benefit of Tofu is that you can create omni-channel content. So because of that, there's actually no one, and I will share one example, but there's so many different ways. So for people use it for like ABM campaigns, people use repurposing to create social posts, like long form blog content. Recently, I just had a chat with another customer today morning where they had a white paper, but they wanted to now verticalize that white paper across different industries. For example, financial services, like medical industry and so forth. So there's so many different channels that teams are utilizing, which is one benefit of Tofu, that if you do have a multi-channel, omni-channel strategy in your marketing team, you can use Tofu to create all of that content. One thing that has been interesting and has always been kind of top of mind is how much people are comfortable with AI during the output. And the belief was the more people start getting comfortable with that, and obviously the better the technology gets so that it can emulate a real person's output, people will be doing more of this from a co-pilot to an autopilot. And the exciting thing that I want to share is we have seen customers that are moving more to an autopilot where they say, oh, I mean, obviously there's different stages of the funnel in your market campaigns. The more campaigns that are more at the bottom of the funnel, and you want a more human touch, so you want to be careful with those campaigns. But the ones that are more in the top of funnel, for example, let's say you have a visitor visit your website, and now you want to pair that with some kind of outbound campaign motion where you send a personalized email sequence per to the landing page. We're now able to do that fully on autopilot. And again, the primary blocker for that being possible is whether the humans are able to tailor the output in a way that they think is correct. But we have seen customers that have been putting that whole top of funnel on autopilot, where they have users visiting their website. Once they visit their website, they have a list of target accounts that they want to now create personalized content for. They use Tofu to create the personalized email sequence and the personalized landing page. We export that back to their marketing automation tool of choice, in this case, HubSpot. And then they send those emails out with that personalized landing page attached to it. And all of that is done on autopilot. So from a marketer's point of view, you're getting value out of personalized email campaigns, personalized landing page, all built for your customers that you would otherwise maybe not even have engaged with or have had time to create a more personalized touch with. So excited to see how that landscape is evolving.
Does that mean we can take this podcast that we have right now and convert it perhaps into some social material, etc., using your platform?
100%. So funnily enough, in terms of video and then like audio content, there's 2 or 3 popular types of content. Webinars actually is number 1, podcast number 2. Number 3 is things like interviews for case studies. But all our customers do is upload that link. It could be a YouTube link. It could be uploading your MP4 file, your MP3 file. We will automatically transcribe it with speaker identification. And people have used that for social copy, blog posts, marketing email snippets. They use it to pull out specific quotes and statistics, all sorts of derivative content. We see that all the time. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, my marketing team is probably going to be really excited to hear this. So maybe can you tell us a little bit more about your background and then what inspired you to start Tofu?
Yeah. So my kind of journey is an interesting one. So I started out my career at Google back in 2013, of all things, training language models. So my fun joke is that we always thought our language models were large back then, just back in 2013, like training using petabytes of data. And like, we have the largest language models. But no, they were not called LLMs. And here we are, like, a decade later with language models having so much impact. I stayed there for about 4 or 5 years. And then I did my first startup. It's at that point when I got really my first taste of marketing. Like I mentioned earlier, it was really challenging because each channel seemed to operate in its own way, right? If you think about, there's a blog post, you need to know something about SEO. I don't know about that, so you need to go figure that out. Paid channels. Every paid channel operates in its own way. Email, there's a separate tool for that. I need some website presence. I need a separate tool for that. So there's this tremendous amount of fragmentation across the whole market space, which makes it challenging for entrepreneurs and businesses to, do all the marketing on top of all the other daily jobs they have. So since then, I've always been fascinated with, marketing automation tools and any kind of, services and tools that help businesses scale their marketing efforts. Since then, I was at some startups and large companies and everything in between. But then at the end of 2022, like a lot of people saw this potential with language models and generative AI and what it could do. It was really interesting because I've been in the AI space for quite a bit. AI has been used for everything from ad optimization to like ranking, personalization, recommendations. But this new way of generative AI can create net new content. And you can take a sit back and look from a business perspective. The functions that rely on content the most is the marketing teams, right? They create a lot of content across different channels, and the whole marketing team's performance is in some sense gated by the performance of the content that they create. So we were thinking, these folks are smart. They probably will try to leverage this in some way or fashion. So that's when we started really chatting with a lot of people in the space, B2B marketing leaders, to see how they can leverage these tools and really what their pain points are. And that's actually how we came up with those 2 kind of core products that we have today. One is around repurposing, remixing, and the other is around personalization at scale. These are things that people mention to us that is like such a big problem for them. They know it works, but it's just impossible to do at scale.
Nice. So you saw a problem in your past experiences, both at large companies like Google and your prior startup, and you said, "Look, I'm going to go solve this problem as a software platform." Well, let's talk about that problem and the big picture. So, say in 5 years, what do you think the state of the art looks like for B2B marketing?
Well, first of all, it's hard to predict. Like the space is moving so fast. Like there was a time where like every week there's a new thing happening. It might have slowed down slightly, but it's like we don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. It's really done. A lot of people are speculating whether like we've really truly kind of saturated the performance of the language models, or do we still have a lot to go out there? Is it more of the workflows that we need to improve to actually utilize this technology? There's a lot of questions still to be asked. That said, I do think AI will be ingrained throughout every aspect of the marketing functions. Well, everything from like, targeting, attribution is a popular one that people mention a lot. And obviously what we do on the content and campaign management side, I think AI will be playing a critical role. One thing I do feel, because there's going to be such a proliferation of tools and like software that can help create and help with all these other aspects of marketing, there'll be parts where really, at least for a while, still be relied on humans. And I think one part of that is, for example, branding. How you define your core brand of your company, of your product you sell, would be more and more important, because the other parts around actually creating effective, say, copy for your ads or your social or even your landing page will be more and more optimized with tools like Tofu. But the core brand of what your voice is something that, people want to be able to, be different from other competitors. So I think there'll be extra, it'll be almost bimodal. There'll be the parts that will be more operational and you'll be using software to continuously optimize. And there'll be the other parts like the branding, the strategic or the creative part of marketing, where there'll be even stronger emphasis with humans.
Yeah. And do you think the structure of or the roles within the marketing teams for B2B organizations specifically will change quite a bit as a result of these changes?
I do think so. And we are already seeing the early signs of it. Like people are thinking more efficiently how to scale their marketing teams. We hear a lot where there's some internal like a reorg or restructure within the marketing teams and they're building from ground up. They're saying, well, do I really need a super heavy content team? Do we really need that extra budget for that agency that we have been spending? Can we do more with less? We hear that phrase a lot. So I do think people will think more from a first principle mindset in terms of building out their marketing team. This might be taken more in terms like where they want to find the right personnel within the marketing team. Might be also find the right person that can leverage these technologies more efficiently and putting them at the core and the center of their marketing efforts. So I do think things will change. Exactly how, I think it's kind of TBD.
And then let's put a customer lens on, right? So there's already been quite a lot of improvements over the years in personalizing content for customers. Maybe websites can be personalized a little bit, but with some of these advancements, what's the level of personalizations that customers will come to expect, or will they consume different types of content?
I think it's a great question. I think there's kind of two aspects of this. One is the actual level of personalization that we can expect to provide to our customers and the customers can expect to see that's relevant for them. And the second is, well, what parts of my user journey are you going to personalize for me? So I'll talk about the first one. It's been that interesting evolution, what we say personalization, right? On the sales side, there's always been a more one-to-one depersonalization in terms of outreach. On the marketing side, it's really been hello, first name, at your company name. It's been that level of personalization for like literally templates. 2 decades, basic templates. And now we're kind of at that stage where we're saying, oh, well, we can find out what their LinkedIn profiles, maybe pull in their persona and do something specific to the industry. But I think this will be coming more and more. And I think there's 2 parts of why personalization works today, or maybe 2 years ago. The first part of why personalization works is as a recipient, as a consumer, you kind of know the other person put in that extra effort, try to learn more about you, and put in that time. So you appreciate that, right? So this person has done their homework, and you think that's something that it's meaningful for them. That's why they put in the time. So it might be meaningful for me. The second reason personalization is it's been helpful is because it's just simply more relevant for me. So if you have a generic platform that targets 7 different personas, but I only care about one of them, I want to make sure that when I target that specific persona, it's as relevant for that person as possible. So there's the relevancy part, and there's that, oh, you put in a lot of effort, so I want to give you credit for that. I would say moving forward, you put in a lot of effort, so I want to give you credit for that, will become more and more diminished because of this proliferation of tools that can do personalization. Yeah. However, we still feel that relevancy is still king. I don't care if you use some AI automation tool to figure out what my needs are, but if it's truly my needs, I will use and consider talking and buying your tool. So the question is, can you still make it more relevant in this new world of hyper personalization at scale? So this means a lot about understanding more about you, obviously individually, more about the company in different stages, and a really key part. And this has been such a key part of what people have discussed in the past as well. It's not just the personalization; it's the timing, right? When's the right timing for me to reach out to that person, and helping the AI tools helping marketers figure out that timing will be such a key point. So I would say the relevancy part of personalization will become more and more important. There's now the second part around personalization when we say, okay, now we figured out the actual messaging. That's going to be more relevant and more personalized. But what parts of the user journey are you actually going to personalize for me? So my thesis is that right now, whatever we're doing, it's like child's play. All we're doing right now, if you go to a landing page or an email, we're changing that copy a little bit, right? So we're saying, oh, this subject line, let's tune it to this subject line that's more relevant for this persona or this industry. Oh, this landing page, let's maybe swap in a logo or whatnot. But maybe we can personalize the header, maybe a paragraph. Let's personalize it for that target. every aspect, every element that you see, let's pick a landing page, for example, because it has many different elements. Think about not just the header, but the background image that you put there. What about the case study that you put there? Can we make sure that case study is the most relevant case study for that specific target that you're targeting for? What about that group of logos? Can we put a logo that's maybe a competitor of that target that we're targeting to make it more relevant for them? What about a customer pull quote? So there's so many different elements in the whole website. Same for emails. We just had a conversation with the BDR team yesterday, and we were saying, we put in like small case studies of customer list that we gave to one of our customers. We want to show a case study that's more relevant for the targets that we're targeting for our ABA campaign. So there's so many different elements from case studies, customer pull quotes, images, links, videos that we can personalize at the account level. So I feel in the future, not just the copy, which we're doing right now, but the whole user experience when you land on the page is going to be personalized for you. If you think about on the consumer side, like your LinkedIn page or your Twitter page, every single pixel is personalized for you. There's no reason why it shouldn't be for kind of a B2B website as well. So that's how I feel it's going to evolve.
Yeah, and we talked about personalization from a customer's or an end user's perspective. And personalization is great as long as it doesn't hallucinate and is not inaccurate, right? So do you think companies are comfortable today, or how will their comfort level be in terms of letting AI personalize things? How much guardrails do they need to put in place? How much human review is required? Any thoughts on that, the trade-offs that companies will make there?
Yeah, I think there are trade-offs, and I think they will probably select specific campaigns in their funnel that they feel are more suited for that kind of automation. I think the fundamental blocker will always come on the content quality. So when I mention content quality, do the individuals have faith that the output that AI is generating for them is very similar to what they would have created individually themselves? And if they can't go over that hurdle, and that means if our or any tool can't go over the hurdle and meet the needs of the customers there's no way that they're going to put that on autopilot. So for example, we put a lot of effort within Tofu where they can upload their style guide. They can create multiple different tones, specific for every type of content that they create. And there's a human in the loop, and we train based on that. So for example, we give like 2 or 3 different variations for each component in the landing page, and they say, I like variation number 3. We will use that information so that the next time they generate content, it's more biased towards the output they selected previously. So over time, we see our customers say, it's getting much better to the quality output that we have been expecting. And that kind of, narrows the gap of the either uncomfortable they have around AI being fully autopilot or whatnot. But once they overcome that initial gap, they see so many opportunities where they can free up their time and still keep the customers engaged because they now have trust in the output that the AI creates. One thing we also do differently is you can select which parts of your content you want to personalize. So you might still have a landing page, but you might be more selective and saying like just a couple points in this landing page I want to personalize. So we give a lot of levers for the users and controllability on them deciding which parts of the content they want to personalize at scale. But once they do go over that, I think people are now much more comfortable. Now, there is one aspect of automation at scale that I think can be harmful. And I think people are seeing that a bit. It's more around that initial prospecting and targeting. So, there's a lot of tools out there that do like AI SDR at scale. And not only do they create the content, but they're also saying, we'll figure out the targets as well. So especially in maybe an area, let's say you do vertical SaaS and your TAM is somewhat limited. So you have realistically like maybe a couple hundred to a few thousand companies that you're targeting. They can burn through that list really quickly. So that's been a concern that I've heard a bit, where if you're using full automation to not just create the content, but also do that outbound prospecting and targeting and reaching out, before you know it, you burn through all your potential target customers. And that's something, you don't want to do as a company. So that's something I think, we're keeping an eye on. And I think people are kind of realizing that they have to be a little bit more careful now.
And when you said, especially if you have a small or not a kind of infinite TAM, there's a risk that you burn through your contacts. And inherently, you're saying that AI may not be putting your company's best foot forward. Otherwise, why would you be burning through your contacts, right? So kind of elaborate on that.
It's funny because people say you have to put the right incentives in play for your team to be successful. I think you have to put the right incentives in play for AI tools as well for them to be successful. So if your metric is to just say number of demos booked. They will do whatever to get those number of demos booked, right? So for example, they might burn through like all the content they have, and they might go for even the first tier ones that they know it's going to highly convert, but if not, they'll just go to the next like level, which is maybe a wide set of targets, but they just like burn through them. I would say maybe there is an elegant way of dealing this where if you set the metric to be, I want to increase the number of conversions per targets that I send out, right? And then maybe the AI, we can have agents that are being more thoughtful and doing more experiments themselves. But I do think it does come down to its incentives and the metrics that you're optimizing for and telling the AI to optimize for what kind of metric. I do think there's a way in a path forward where a lot of the prospecting and the targeting can also be done in a more thoughtful way. Maybe we're just in that early innings on that level as well.
Your company's name is Tofu, which I would assume is top of funnel, right? But I would imagine as you can personalize more of the marketing content, it makes sense that it's more relevant middle of the funnel and even lower down the funnel, maybe with some sales assist. So how do you view that playing out?
I think there's two angles to this. I think, first of all, the part that I think marketing will have more agency around helping the company is actually more in the top of funnel, because there's still that, SDR, BDR type outreach that might be doing cold prospecting, or even if it's a warm outreach with people that have maybe downloaded some asset on their website, then you're outreaching to those customers. And even doing that at scale has been a more laborious, like one-to-one effort that teams have been doing. But that's the immediate, I think, unlock that we see. Any kind of communication that comes out for your company at scale, the marketing team already owns, right? If you think about all the nurture campaigns and lifecycle campaigns, marketing already owns those email communication and everything around that. But now, like if it's that early prospecting, 100%, I think we see that happen a lot. You do raise up an interesting point though, where, well, what about more deeper in the funnel? So I still think sales will own that. It'll be actually more and more of a relational game where they want that human touch. They know that the initial outreach is probably going to be somewhat automated, or there's some tool that they're going to get it. But as they go, especially more on the enterprise and upmarket side, I do think that human touch of understanding exactly what the buyer's pain points are, what are some of the nuances of getting this deal moving forward and close. I think humans will still 100% have to be in the loop. So I don't think marketing goes too deep down on the bottom of funnel where the sales team traditionally has owned. However, what we do see though is sales teams still struggling to provide the right materials to like have their champion win over other stakeholders in their company, right? And marketing having trouble keep up with the needs around sales enablement material that the sales team has to provide. And this is another great area where I think tools like Tofu can help, where sales deck is often one that comes up and again. Microsites where the sales team puts up maybe a small site with like core maybe case studies and use cases that customer specifically cares about. That's hyper-personalized for them. Now the marketing team can create those assets for the sales team to leverage when they go try to close these deals that are more down in the funnel. So I do think the sales team still owns the bottom of the funnel, but I think marketing team can assist them much better, which they've always wanted to do, but have been struggling because they're just bandwidth constrained.
So have you encountered any resistance or concerns from customers regarding AI-driven decision making or maybe the quality, and how do you address these concerns?
Yeah, we actually, when we first started Tofu and rolling Tofu out to customers, the number one concern people had when started using the tool was the output of the content. And I feel there's two elements to this. One is we were a little bit far away from being able to output the quality that users expect. And we put a lot of effort here. For example, like I mentioned earlier, we put in effort where you can put in your own style guide. And we want to make sure every content that we create from thereafter follows the style guide. We go and scrape their website so we don't understand exactly how they communicate to their customers today and make sure we adhere to that. You can create custom tones. You now have the human in the loops where the users can give us feedback on terms of what kind of output they like. We have our internal own quality evaluation framework where every single week we evaluate different models and different criteria. For example, everything from like, is it hallucinating? How deep is the personalization? Does it follow the format? Is it on brand with their style guide? And we have human raters and both LLMs rate the performance of all our models. And then we just choose the best one. So we have a very rigorous quality evaluation framework. And that over time has helped tremendously. So now at this point, we almost never hear concerns around the output quality not being really good, and especially for our more tenured customers, because over time it gets better and better. Another thing, though, that's kind of tendential, it's not related with any one platform, it's also the user's expectation on what they can get out of a tool like Tofu or AI in general. They imagine an AI tool is like a magic wand and they can exactly read your mind. But in practice, even if it was a human, that's not the case, right? So they're like giving some content to create and say, oh, create this LinkedIn post based on this like marketing brief I have. And they don't like the output. But then the question is, even if you ask a really talented content writer to do that with that limited amount of information, the initial version probably won't be that good because you haven't specified exactly what you want the format to be like or like the tone. So I think there's a little bit of education and learning curve on the user side as well on say, oh, okay, I do need to provide a little bit more information. Now it's our job to make that as seamless and as easy as possible. But we have seen that evolution as well from the user side. Say, okay, now I feel myself being more and more effective using Tofu. So I think there's kind of both two paths, both on our side and on the user side, but the quality is important.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen in various domains like self-driving that the expectation from AI is sometimes much greater than the expectation from humans. I find it fascinating to see how different companies are pricing their AI products, and because you're an AI-first platform, that's probably something that you kind of focus on quite a bit. So, how do you price the Tofu platform today?
It's a pretty standard pricing model. We have a subscription model that's based on an annual contract, and we have a baseline platform fee. In the future, we will be basing tiers of buckets pricing based on the number of content generated. Our goal is really to make sure our customers are getting value out of Tofu by creating more content more effectively. So obviously, if we have a pricing model that aligns with their value capture, that's ideal. I think we're moving away from more of a user-based pricing seat where people are charging by users. I think our goal is to make teams more effective and efficient and do more with less. But if you are able to create more content across your different campaigns, across different channels that you're currently using, that's a win for us. And hopefully it's a win for our customers as well. So we'll charge based on that.
Yeah, I mean, user-based pricing can get challenging if you're automating a lot of the activities. Have you thought about pricing based on your customers' contacts, so the number of account or leads or people that they are sending the content to?
That's a great question. Yes, we have thought about it. We're not sure if that's the right model, though. One reason is the number of targets that you want to reach and personalize is not always correlated with your ability to pay more. So what I'm trying to say is, actually more smaller companies like seed stage or early stage companies, they, kind of deploy a more spray and pray tactic where they're really doing outbound at scale. The enterprise customers actually, usually they already have a brand awareness, so they have a lot of inbound already coming in. And it's like more of that sales enablement material that they try to personalize the content around the support sales team. So they are not the companies that are doing like 2,000 or 5,000 targets at scale. It's actually the early stage companies that do that at scale. So now you have this dilemma. Well, I think it makes sense from a cost perspective, but the aptitude to pay is not dated purely on the number of contacts. It's actually maybe based on number of different channels that you're using, or maybe separate sub teams within your marketing team that want to create their own playbook. But yeah, we have thought for that, but it's not. I don't think it's a clear cut.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The value of increased conversion can vary significantly and have a major impact on the ROI of your product, which is obviously different than the number of leads that you're reaching out to. I'd like to switch gears to company building. You've obviously spent time at leadership roles at Google and other large organizations. What were the biggest challenges you faced in transitioning to the founder and CEO of a startup?
I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but something I knew, but I constantly remind myself every day, is the ability to have myself and the team work with the agency. I feel the effect of apathy in your day-to-day work or lack of urgency in your day-to-day work is much more pronounced in a startup than it is in a big company, for the better or the worse, right? In a big company, you usually have that buffer that the company had created before your time that you somewhat psychologically rely on. So if there's something that you can say, oh, we'll do it, next week, or let's meet next week to discuss this. Oh no, it's sort of like, let's talk about it right now and get the team together. Working with that agency is in some sense the strength of a startup. So being able to leverage that as much as possible is so crucial. So I'd say that's the biggest thing that I always constantly remind myself and the team.
I wanted to ask you before we close out just a couple of broad questions about generative AI. So first, what Gen AI use cases are you most excited about?
Oh, I haven't mentioned this thing because I think you mentioned self-driving early on. I got to get on a Waymo first time over the weekend, and it was really an eye-opening experience. I think I wasn't as excited about this since the web. People compare it to the iPhone, but I think it was actually more than the iPhone. And it was really smooth experience. I could totally see using self-driving cars to do all the drop-offs and pickups for my kids. And there's a lot of other implications that surrounded this as well, right? So, urban, maybe all the cars in urban areas will go away, but suburban areas, maybe that will grow. Will people take on more longer trips? What about kind of senior care? Like, with this increased mobility, will there be a lot of kind of business opportunities around that as well? It's just a fascinating area, and it's totally tangential and separate from what I'm doing right now. But it is an area where I see AI as being more and more proliferated across every single aspect of our daily life. And I'm excited for it. I almost wish I kind of feel bad that I was born a bit, maybe 50 years too early. But I'm really excited about this self-driving use case. I think there's not a lot of implications around that. It's going to be exciting. The second, I think, is a more common one around coding and building with Copilot. What's the recent one? A Cursor, or it's kind of, I have a boy that's 10 years old and he's into coding, and he was using MIT Scratch platform. And there's so much you can do. And just the interface right now from a more programmatic semantic language to be more natural language and being able to code and build stuff is going to open up so much more. So as long as you have kind of your core idea and your thesis on what you think is going to be impactful, and you have the right distribution channels to do that, I think building is going to be much more lower, friction point for a lot of the people out there, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, it still feels like the world would be far better off if we had a much higher number of software engineers, and maybe the hottest programming language is trending towards English over time, which is very, very exciting because that obviously increases the supply significantly. Is there something you believe in that the rest of the world you think doesn't?
I don't know how many people think this as well, but I am a little bit concerned with as language models and generative AI becomes commonplace, that our web gets more and more closed, right? If you think about the early 2000s where everyone's so excited about the open web, right? You can literally put up a website on some server and anyone in the world can find you and learn from you. I think it was such a beautiful place. It might sound like a Wild West, but I think it's really beautiful that everyone has to say and you can reach anyone at any place. And search enabled that. And obviously over time, we saw more of the big platforms like Facebook and maybe Reddit and Twitter, and it becomes more and more closed. But I feel that will further accelerate as, OpenAI and these other large generative AI companies leverage the data in the open web. And unless there's a really good way to figure out the licensing model, people will shut down more, right? So there'll be more maybe small pockets of private entities that are creating this really relevant, interesting human level creativity content. But then the open web by itself will be less accessible, less closed. So I'm actually quite worried about that. I know there's these small licensing models that are done at the enterprise level. So I know Reddit has this data license agreement with OpenAI. But what about that small blog or that small niche area of the world where you have this really amazing genius of sharing information, but it's no longer being shared, right? Or maybe shared in a private forum, so people have less access to that.
Or maybe shared and no one can get to because it doesn't surface in the answers given by OpenAI or Gemini.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Fortunately, unfortunately, there are a bunch of startups trying to figure out that question, both in terms of the licensing, but also the significant change in the advertising landscape that might happen once you go away from 10 blue links where you're deciding what to click on, and some of them are paid versus the answer is served to you, which is maybe another form of the closed less open way to access information. Well, EJ, this has been wonderful. Thank you for dropping some great insights. So that for our listeners, where can they go to learn more about Tofu and stay updated with the latest developments?
Well, we have our website at tofuhq.com. Please also follow us on LinkedIn. That's where most of our activity happens, and we share all the new insights that we get from our customers, what's trending in terms of what our marketing teams or what our customers are using in terms of their marketing campaigns. So yeah, those would be the two places to follow us and learn more about Tofu.
Great. tofuhq.com. EJ, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Gaurav.